time to see that people actually show up. I'm going to turn my camera off in my.
Oh, here they come.
So Chris, you're sharing your screen right now. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
I see the all hands webinar for degraded visual environment.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay.
All right. So we've got about 46. Who are we missing on panelists right now? Eric and Tony. Jill, is Tyson going to join you, or is this going to you solo?
Nope, Corey's on with us right now. Tyson is joining, I'm sure. So
Okay.
yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. Got about a minute. Hey, Michael, are you able to bring up your camera?
I am working on it. I will get there.
Okay, no worries.
I am struggling with the camera for some reason. Restarting and starting. We'll get there.
No worries. All right, we're at the top of the hour, so I'm going to kick this off. We got about 79, 78 attendees in addition to the panelists. So good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this March All Hands, USHST All Hands webinar. We've got a lot to cover today. Myself and Michael Bartron will be facilitating. Oops, sorry, trying to advance my screen. Let's see. Sorry. There we go. I got the agenda up there. Like I said, we got a lot to cover, and looking forward to providing everybody some great information. Certainly very thankful to our presenters and the hard work that they've done not only with the helicopter safety enhancements, but the work involved for this all hands webinar. Just keep in mind that for everybody participating, we're going to record this session and it'll be accessible later on the USHST YouTube channel. The presentations will be available there as well. For folks that are interested in continuing education and through the FAA Wings program, you can get up to about 2 credits for attending this. You got to make sure that you have an active FAA safety.gov account and that you participate or stay on this webinar the entire time so that it can be verified through the FAST team. But encourage you to check out that website as well to make sure you're current, and you can post questions in the webinar using the little question option at the bottom. And with that, I will turn it over to Wayne Fry and Nick Mayhew for any opening remarks.
Thanks, Chris. And I'll just go first quickly. I'd like to welcome everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world. Welcome to our USHST All Hands. First of all, I'd like to thank Chris and his team for setting this up. Again, it takes a lot of time and energy to put this stuff together for you guys, and so please use it to make our lives, make everybody's lives safer. We're going to be talking about degraded visual environment for these 2 hours, a very important area, and we're losing too many lives in this DVE space. So please listen to the safety enhancements that we're going to talk about, and take them out, take away the advice that you're given, and let's make us all operate safer. Thank you. Wayne.
Thank you, Nick, and would like to welcome everybody. I see we're up over 100 participants now, which is very exciting, and please spread the word to other folks. These are amazingly valuable meetings, and there's a lot to be learned. And I just want to remind everybody, if you have not been to the USHST.org website lately, go visit it. It has evolved so quickly and so well over the last 6-12 months. It's just amazing what's on there and what's available to you. And like Nick said, we're all about safety, and there's so many good resources there for you. So please continue to participate in these kind of meetings, in the Wings meetings. The FAA is certainly out there promoting a lot of safety. So thank you for joining us. And Nick, I think we got a lot of great material, like you said today, and this video is amazingly powerful. So I'll turn it back, and thank you folks for joining us today. And I really appreciate your time and energy. Bye-bye.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick and Wayne, our co-chairs for USHST. We appreciate all your great leadership and guidance. Next up, we'll go with our polling question. So Michael, I'll let you introduce that.
Thank you. If we could get the polling question on the screen. We're really talking about the current time. If you're in Northern Hemisphere, we've got welcome to spring. So here we are heading into April. Question is, during the months of April and May, what helicopter industry, so what sector of our helicopter industry for the past 10 years has had the most fatal accidents? 4 choices there: utilities, patrol / construction, aerial application, thinking about ags and spraying, personal private, or helicopter air ambulance. Please make your choice. And as spring provides hopefully nicer weather everywhere, think about some of the things coming up as well in this webinar. So we'll give people a minute or two to think about which sector of the industry. We have a chance to, I guess we'll show the results here in a second. Okay, it looks like we've got personal private at 48% as the choice high mark, and the answer is C. It actually accounted for 31% of the fatal accidents over the April and May period over the past 10 years. So well done on that. But let's bear in mind all these sectors and how they're going to affect or influence the topics coming up. So thanks for that.
Awesome. Yeah, great information there, and certainly some good selections by the audience. Continuing with this theme with the accidents, our first presenter, Lee Roskop with the FAA, is going to provide us with all the great data analysis that he does on a monthly basis. So Lee, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Chris. Appreciate it. So hopefully you're all able to see my screen there with the helicopter accident data lead in. So to start out with, just go right to our 5-year fatal accident rate, 5-year average fatal accident rate. So a reminder again, the USHST's goal is to reduce the US 5-year average fatal accident rate to 0.55 by 2025. So we're just over a year into that, a year and 3 months. So about 3 years, 9 months remain to reach the goal. You can see right now we are at 0.7 per 100,000 flight hours. So still got a little ways to go there. Now keep in mind that some of the years that are included in that 0.7, we have 2018 and 2019 that were both 0.8 per 100,000 flight hours. So they're sort of inflating that number a little bit. So the idea is if we can continue to sort of string together the years that are closer to that 5-year average that we want to get to, we're going to see that line start to make a turn in the other direction. Now, just another way to sort of present the same kind of data over here on the far left side of the chart. We have what our baseline was for this current goal that started in January of 2020. And that is based on a baseline years of 2014 through 2018. Those 5 years, the average was 0.62 per 100,000 flight hours. On the far right, we see what our goal rate is of 0.55 per 100,000 flight hours. And then moving from left to right, so the 5-year average in progress we just discussed was 0.7 per 100,000 flight hours. Now for the years that are actually going to count in the end goal, we have 2020 and then the 3 months of 2021 so far. And you can see that rate is better. It's 0.6 per 100,000 flight hours, so well within striking distance of our 0.55 goal. For the current year so far in 2021, January through March, we're at 0.41 per 100,000 flight hours. And then for the current month, we're at 0.71. That was a bit lower before 3 days ago, before the tragic event there in Alaska that we had over the weekend. Giving you an idea of what this looks like in terms of raw counts as we go 3 months into the year now. No fatal accidents in January, 1 in February, and 2 in March, for 3 total. And that's the green line you see, and that's measured against where we have been for the previous 5-year period, 2014 through 2018 baseline. So the further we stay in terms of a delta between those 2 lines, the better. So we're there right now, and hopefully can continue that way as we move into the next quarter of the year. This just gives you an idea of the individual years that are feeding into to our 5-year fatal accident rate average. As we look at the far right side of the chart, and I mentioned earlier, we have these 2 years, 2018 and 2019, right now, that are bumping that average up higher than we would like to see as we keep moving along the calendar here. Of course, those will drop out at some point in time, and we're looking to see more years that are along this lines, or even better. If we can keep that 0.41 rate per 100,000 flight hours, through the end of the year, that would be fantastic, because obviously that would be our best on record ever. Giving an idea on the fatality rates. Again, this is one that up until a few days ago, we were trending below 1 per 100,000 flight hours, and so a fatality rate being number of occupants that we've lost in a given calendar year. But as you can imagine, when you lose 5 folks at once in a fatal accident like we did this past weekend, that caused that to bump up again above the 1 per 100,000 flight hour level. Transitioning now to the accident rates. So currently trending even below what 2020's rate was, which was the best that we've had on record. So 2.87 per 100,000 flight hours. So looking good so far on that one. And wrapping up just with a discussion of very brief discussion of the industry sector. As I mentioned, there's only 3 total fatal accidents so far for type certificated and restricted category rotorcraft for the calendar year, and those are spread out among the 3 industries that that you see there on the screen. And finally, the last slide are accidents by industry. Personal private has been trending above what its historical percentage has been, not only for this fiscal year, which starts at the beginning of October. Usually personal private is somewhere around a quarter of our accidents in a given year. So we're up to almost a third of that for this year. So one more reason why that continues to be a focus area for the USHST. On this unknown area here, the reason for that is we still have some of the accidents that do not have an NTSB preliminary report yet. So we don't speculate on that. We wait until we at least have a preliminary report before we try to categorize it by an industry sector. Instructional training category, that one's trending at about what the historical norms have been for the past 10 years or so. It's typically somewhere in the 15 to 17% range. So you can see we're right in that ballpark again this year. Aerial application, as many are aware, is typically our other among our top 3 industry sectors for overall accidents. It also tends to be there for our fatal accidents as well. It is typically between 15 and 17% again, but right now it's at 9%. One of the things that we want to be aware of course, we're getting into the start of the North American growing season, be more flying for herbicides, pesticides, that sort of thing. So the aspiration is that to keep this percentage where it's at or lower, and not see a surge of those as we get into the later spring and even into the summer months. So 22 total accidents so far for January through March of 2021. And that was my last slide. So thanks for your attention on that, and back to Chris and Michael.
All righty. Thanks, Lee. We did have one question come in, I think during the polling. One of the gentlemen asked about where did HEMS, or the air medical helicopter air ambulance, fall into the categories, or at least that timing of that question. I didn't know if you had any further information about that.
So what I'll do with that one, Chris, is it'll be an easy one for me to answer, but I don't know it off the top of my head, and you know me well enough that I don't like to guess. So I'll look that one up, and then I'll send it to you, and you can brief it later on as we kind of go throughout the webinar.
Okay, no worries. Are there any other questions? I don't see anything in the chat right now. Oh wait, here, let me open up the Q&A. There is one actually a couple. So we've got one. Do these numbers represent the number of fatal accidents per 100,000 hours, or the number of fatalities per 100,000 hours? Okay, so for the charts that I showed, the one that the USHST goal rate is off of is fatal accidents per 100,000 hours. I did have slides in there that showed not only the fatal accidents per 100,000 hours, but I had a slide that showed the fatality rate. So that would be number of occupants. So both were presented in the slides, just on different slides. But our USHST goal is tied to 5-year average fatal accidents per 100,000 hours. Okay, great. And another question, how does the yearly helicopter accident rate compare to the airplane accident rate? Probably not a fair comparison, but maybe it is. So for the overall accident rate, I'm not sure on that one. I know for the fatal accident rate,
So the General Aviation Joint Steering Committee, which is basically our sibling organization for overall GA, primarily fixed wing, the rates that they're seeing are in the neighborhood of 0.9-ish per 100,000 flight hours. So obviously ours are a little bit below that for rotorcraft specific. So yeah, that's basically what the comparison is, and I think they're shooting to get down to maybe close to, I think, the 0.8 range or somewhere in there over the next 10 years or so. That's what their goal is for their team.
Okay. And one last question. Are there any active actions to reduce the private accident rate?
So we have a specific functional group within the USHST that is that's focused on that. So so the USHST has 4 industry sectors basically that we're devoting additional attention to. So it's personal private, the aerial application, the helicopter air ambulance, and also the commercial segment within the overall industry. So we do have folks that are trying with regards to our outreach team to organize seminars, participate through the FAA safety team and those sorts of efforts to outreach. But I guess the other thing that I would add is, one of the great things about these webinars is every single person that participates in these becomes an ambassador. You know where the information is, you know what's briefed at these, and you know the people who maybe don't tune into these on a regular basis. So please, I just encourage you, if you know folks that are personal private flyers, that you get this information to them or point them to USHST kind of events.
Yeah, thanks, Lee, and for everybody, again, yeah, please go to the website ushst.org. There's so many resources there for the personal private sector as well as the whole industry to find information, the topics today and other topics we've briefed in the past and that are on the website. These helicopter safety enhancements are geared towards helping to reduce these types of accidents. That's what the analysis that was done was, to find these areas, these sectors, and then strategic, specific enhancements that would hopefully, the goal, of course, is to reduce that. So I encourage everyone to go check that out. And again, like Lee said, please spread the word to get as many people involved with these webinars and accessing the information. That's the best way that we can all collectively help reduce this accident rate, to be more knowledgeable, more experienced, and more proficient. All right. I don't see any other questions. So with that, oh wait, hold on. So the helicopter industry is operating with better or safer states than airplane, based on your answer?
I'd say yes, with a caveat to that, and it's so I'm not going to get too deep into the General Aviation Joint Steering Committee numbers because I don't know them like I know our numbers. And again, I don't like to guess. But so the GA fixed wing numbers also include experimentals and amateur builds. We don't include that in our USHST as type certificated and restricted category. So in some of the GA/JSC slides, they take out the experimental fixed wing aircraft, and if they were, I haven't seen, I don't recall what their rate is if they take out the experimentals and the amateur builds, but it may be closer or perhaps even better than what you see for the rates that I presented. So I just want to offer that caveat on there.
Yeah, and if you haven't mentioned it already, I know we're going to try and focus on it at the next webinar, but for that GA survey that collects the data, the hours, the number of flights, that is critical to help in your analysis to understand what these rates are based on the data that you receive through the GA survey. So encouraging everyone to make sure, do that survey, submit your data.
Yes, thanks for that plug, Chris.
Okay. Awesome. Well, let's shift into our next. Thanks again, Lee. Appreciate it. We're going to go into our next polling question. Michael. I think you're on mute. There you are.
Yeah, sorry about that. Let's get the next polling question up. I don't want to be a spoiler on the next topic, but it is related to the next topic. Lee just talked about, and Chris is just talking about the the promotion side. So if you're watching this webinar, thank you. And we're going to cover a topic that gives you an easy way to promote what we're doing and what helicopter safety is all about when it comes to this 56 seconds to live. So very simply, have you ever had an unintended IMC or IMC event? Sorry about that. So what we're gonna cover for the next few minutes. Again, I don't want to spoil this. Is a really a strong promotion vehicle, excuse me, that USHST and others have helped provide. It's on our website. Please go out to the USHST website. Take a look at the link that gets you out to the YouTube video, 56 seconds to live.
Are we able to put that question up?
Can you see that question? Chris, they're on my screen.
Oh, you do? Okay, for some reason I don't see it, so I just want to make sure it was up there, so.
I hope others can see it.
Oh, there it is.
Should we get a result on there?
Yep.
Okay, so 60-40, yes, no. After watching the video, think more about what led to the situation and how soon can people intervene. Have you ever had a bad day that started mediocre and got worse? Take a look at the video.
Yeah, so next up, as Michael was hinting at, we've got Chris Hill, who's going to be presenting information and the topics around the new video, 56 Seconds to Live. Appreciate everybody involved in that process of creating the video. I know it was a lot of work, HAI and a lot of the working groups with HAI, USHST, of course, was leading the charge there. So with that, Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thanks, Chris and Mike, for teeing us up there, and welcome everybody to our next webinar. And I've been asked to just briefly summarize some of the background and give you a little taste of the 56 Seconds to Live UIMC project that the USHST is actively engaged in right now. By now, I suspect many of you have already seen the video, which portrays an accident scenario. For those of you who have not seen it, I ask you to just bear with me briefly, and I will take you through a quick showing of that video, and then I'll come back and join you in a moment. So I'm going to turn my camera off, and I'll go ahead and set that up. Bear with me one moment.
You're looking at the weather, and it's legal for now. But the day's forecast calls for worsening conditions that might go below limits. Your flight today is for an important new customer that needs parts delivered 50 miles away. You rush through your weather and pre-flight and realize you'll be cutting it close with the forecast. You're informed that the parts are delayed in reaching you, and the weather isn't getting any better. You hurry through your checklists, but you got this. The weather's coming in faster than you thought, but just swing around it. If you canceled every time it looked like this, you'd never fly in this region. As visibility continues to drop, something just doesn't feel right. You gotta stay clear of clouds in this airspace. Obstacle. Caution. What's the height of that new transmission tower around here? Okay, this is getting sporty, and those clouds are a lot thicker. you are way too low. And now, you've just punched in. You feel paralyzed. Time is standing still. You vowed never to let this happen. You now have 56 seconds to live. You're way too low, and it's like the ground is reaching up to you. Panicked, you overcorrect. In no time, you're climbing fast. You now have 45 seconds to live. Now you feel like you're turning and tumbling all at the same time and have lost faith in your instruments. You now have 30 seconds to live. This has become a nightmare roller coaster ride. The aircraft is screaming for your attention, but a part of you is starting to let go. Everything's darker now. You think of your family one last time. I'm sorry. Can you forgive me? But they can't hear you. Because you are out of time.
All right. I trust that everything went through on sound and video on that. I did not get any confirmations from the team. Chris, did that get out to everybody?
Sure did. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll go ahead and share my screen again, just to briefly shift over to a couple of things here and cover for you guys, and we'll take it from there. So sharing once more. Here we go. All right. So for those of you who have not been to the website, obviously we want to get everybody's attention with that pretty compelling video. For the experts in the crowd today, you could probably pick out a few Easter eggs where some things didn't sync up, perfectly in a real world scenario. Bear in mind, we did not want to go actually fly a VFR certified aircraft into the clouds and break our own message. So we had to shift back and forth between a simulator and a real world scenario in an aircraft. So first of all, I'd like to thank Bruce Webb and the folks at Airbus for providing the facility and the aircraft and the time and space to film the in-aircraft portions of the video. Also, Randy Gowenda and his team at Frasca for doing the simulator portions of the video. There's a host of people who've been involved in this project from the outset, and many are still working very hard on this. So I just want to cover a little bit of where we are now on the project, because at the very beginning, we all set out at the USHST to put this package together to prevent and help people learn how to prevent, avoid, and if necessary, in an emergency, recover from a UIMC or a double IMC event. I think we've met the first part of that challenge by getting everybody's attention, getting people to think about it, similar to the 178 seconds of video that is still so very popular in the fixed wing world. What we'd like to do in this project, though, is we wanted to take it a step further and to put you back into the cockpit, not only for the accident scenario, but to also place you in the cockpit to consider some alternative choices that the pilot, and then by extension, you could consider making in the next time you go out and fly, or encouraging others when you're talking about this in a training environment. So we've met step one, we've done the introductory video, but right off the bat, we want people to, if you're telling anybody about this, sharing it with them, take them to the USHST website, ushst.org/56secs. And I'll show you that link in a moment here. And then as soon as you go right below the video window here, you'll see all kinds of good resources that the USHST has put together for you to not only introduce you to the problem, but to offer solutions on how to deal with that very real issue in our industry. I'd also like to point out, just very briefly, I'll show you that video in a moment if time permits, is Bruce Webb from Airbus has actually dropped a video just yesterday. It's the second video shown under the videos header right here. It's called Airbus When IMC is Imminent. So if we get a chance, we'll review that at the very end here. but if not, go ahead and take a look at it.
I'll turn off my.
Okay, I got a little echo there, so hopefully that's not going to continue. So let me jump over to a presentation here very briefly, and I'll cover just a couple more items for you, and then I'll be able to kick it back to you or answer some of your questions. So as you can see, we have the 56 seconds logo to capture your attention, and the website here, ushst.org/56secs. If you go to that site, you'll get all the information you need. And this is just another snapshot in case the web didn't come up with some of the items that are on that website. And finally, just talking about the next step in this process. So we wanted to develop some teachable moments that stem off from the actual accident scenario. So what we did is we highlighted 4 key areas, the decision-making points in the course of this accident scenario, excuse me, where the pilot could have taken a different path. And we highlight each one of those. We call them our alternate endings. And to simplify it, we use a single word of delay, return, land, or transition. And in that, we have an alternate video clip that we will show the same scenario from the start, but ending with a completely different result, obviously, in the life being saved. We'll supplement with a little bit of course content, and then we'll have some supporting messages provided by experts in industry, to include Tim Tucker from Robinson Helicopters, Don Groh from Embry-Riddle, Jim Viola, CEO of HAI, and then of course, Bruce Webb at Airbus. Each of them address this, each of these alternate choices. Now, some of you out there might have different opinions on when and if and how you make that decision to make a change in your flight profile or deciding to even go on the flight at all. This is not intended to get down into the weeds to parse out, minor differences. This is to start the adult conversation to make sure everybody is talking about this very real problem. And this indeed is one of our key featured things that we're putting out to the industry as our solution for prevention of double IMC, or as we call unintended flight into instrument meteorological conditions. So just to highlight very briefly, we see this as just 4 key decisions that a go or a no-go decision decide the fate for the pilot and decide the fate for you as you progress in your own flights. And then again, I teased that we could talk briefly about the sneak peek. So Bruce Webb released a video just yesterday, and he tackles probably the most challenging portion of the UIMC, double IMC scenario. And that is, if somebody's actually missed all of those critical decision-making points in a flight, and there's no safe alternative other than to transition into the clouds, that is what he focuses on here. He emphasizes it as an emergency procedure. I don't want to steal too much of his thunder. I will go ahead and try to play that video for you now, and let's see if we can get that to come up. Bear with me one moment.
What actions can we take to improve our chances of surviving an unintended IMC event, instrument meteorological conditions? Imagine we find ourselves in an environment where continued flight VMC is no longer possible and landing is not an option. What steps can we take? First, you must clear your mind. Push aside the regrets of past decisions because none of that matters now. You must remain in the present and focus entirely upon flying the helicopter. It is critically important that you enter the clouds in a controlled manner. You are not a passenger. You still control the helicopter and your fate. While you still have some visual cues, place the helicopter in straight and level flight. Make no rapid or large flight control inputs. And begin your scan. Attitude, airspeed, altitude. Resist the urge to look back outside. Because once you commit to the instruments, you must remain on the instruments. Be still in your seat. Do not move your head about unnecessarily. Head movements will only aggravate your vestibular system and increase the difficulty of flying the helicopter. Focus on your instrument scan. Move only your eyes. Then, once you're in a stabilized, controlled flight with an airspeed at VY or above, take a few deep breaths and slowly add a small amount of power to begin a climb. You choose when and how you enter the clouds. Do not make any large or rapid inputs. After you've established yourself in a controlled climb, you may consider relaxing your hand on the collective. If the collective has sufficient friction to maintain its placement, you may find it easier to maintain control without much, if any, additional collective control inputs. Turns should only be made if absolutely necessary. Otherwise, climb straight ahead until you reach VMC conditions. It's always a good practice to know where the clouds are, because if you are unable to climb to VMC above the clouds, you may have to maneuver while IMC. Once you are in VMC conditions, or feel 100% confident that you are capable of diverting a portion of your attention to the radio, tune it to 121.5 and declare an emergency. But remember, flying the helicopter must remain your highest priority. Do not become distracted by the radio or feel compelled to comply with the instructions given on the radio. We all have a limited mental capacity, and this situation will require all of it. It is possible that you'll pop out on top and be able to fly to a location where you can descend and land VMC. But if not, you're now in a position to receive help to locate and execute an instrument approach to a nearby airport. Please do not consider this scenario as an option when you flight plan. This is absolutely an emergency situation and therefore must not be used as a backup plan. Making conservative decisions before the flight is the most effective way to avoid such a situation.
All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed that. That's just a small taste, very, very almost word for word content that Bruce delivers in this course. But obviously, given the nature of how important this subject matter is, we don't want to delay any further. We anticipate the course will be ready right around mid-June, if not a little later. We're already finalizing all the finishing touches on the extra videos and the content in the course. So that's all I had for my presentation, and I'll kick it back to you, Chris, and then be prepared to answer maybe a couple quick questions if any pop up. Thank you.
Yeah, great, Chris. Thanks again for the whole team that was involved to create that, and certainly the new video that Bruce just produced and published. There were a couple questions in there. What is the source of the 56 seconds? I'm not completely sure the reference to source, but maybe you have an idea.
Yeah, I'll take a quick crack at it. We are actually working with Scott Terrell, who is a member of the USHST. He and a few others worked together to come up with a retrospective analysis of some recent accidents. I cannot get the exact number, but of those that had sufficient data and metrics provided through either the investigation or through some other recording elements, they were able to pick of those accidents that provided that information to include the recent accident in Calabasas, California. The average time from the moment where it's determined that they entered the clouds in IMC condition all the way to the point where they impacted the ground was on average 56 seconds. We will provide a supporting document that provides some of the background information as part of the course materials or on the USHST website once that is available. They're finalizing some of that content as we speak.
Okay. Another question, I think was for you, not Lee. Where is the data behind this number? Has research been published somewhere so it can be referenced?
Yeah, so Scott Terrell just answered the question. The 31 accidents were reviewed that had this category, and all of the information will be provided with links to the exact the accidents that were referred to and some of the basic fundamentals. Now, we didn't put it through a peer-reviewed scientific MIT study, but we have reasonable expectation that we can stand behind the general numbers, give or take a few seconds.
Okay. And then the various statistics presented by type of flight / industry is very informative. Are there statistics which show how many accidents out of the total or because of weather? That may be a question for Lee to answer.
Yeah, that's probably a Lee question, but we do, in the training course, we do summarize some of the statistics that talk about unintended flight into IMC and spatial disorientation type accidents and loss of control type accidents. One could infer that a good number of those combined together reflect that number, and those values are provided in the course. And if Lee wants to jump on real quick, he feel free to do that. I know we have a schedule that we need to move on towards, so I'll go ahead and bow out and give the floor to Lee. Thank you.
Yeah, this should be a very, very quick answer on that one. I'll just go back to our USHST Pareto chart with our top 3 occurrence categories of loss control in flight, unintended flight into IMC, and low altitude operations where the helicopter strikes something. So those 3 categories combined account for between 50 and 60% of our fatal accidents. When we look at that over a 10-year time frame, the unintended flight into IMC accounts for roughly a third of that 50%. So you're talking anywhere from 15 to 17 or so % for UIMC, in a given year.
All right, great, Lee. Thank you so much for popping back up and staying on. And there was another question, will this be published then so we can replicate the methods and statistics behind this? The Vertical Flight Society would be a good location for this. And I believe the answer is yes, that will be published. All right, so Michael, let's jump into our next polling question.
Okay, so we're going to step a little deeper into the topic of spatial disorientation with the DVE topic that Nick led off this webinar. So if we can get that next question on the screen, and I'll ask all the participants to think a little bit about their experience with spatial disorientation with degraded environment. The question simply: have you ever continued a VFR flight into deteriorating weather? Started off VFR, thinking about that video, and we're gonna tee up the next topic related to this question, or extending from this question. So. Okay. We have, Ashton, if we could take a peek at the yes/no balance on this. Have you ever continued into a VFR flight, or a VFR into deteriorating weather? So 7 out of 10, yes. Let's look forward to the messages coming up on spatial disorientation and the related topics. So back over to you, Chris, please.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I appreciate the honesty of all of our attendees with answering that. I'm certainly guilty of myself, in the past have done that. So you can see that a large proportion of us have kind of set us up for potential failure by doing this. So this list segues right into our next presentation, Helicopter Safety Enhancement number 127 Alpha, which is about spatial disorientation induced by a degraded visual environment. We're very fortunate to have some great and talented and knowledgeable people to talk to you today. Jill Browning, Tyson Phillips, and Corey. Corey, if I mispronounced Bordeaux incorrectly, I apologize, but we'll turn it over to you all. And do you need help loading your presentation?
I think Tyson's getting it up now, right, Tyson? All right, so I'll go ahead and get started anyway in the interest of time. First, thank you to you all for inviting us to share our message on spatial disorientation induced by a degraded visual environment. I am Jill Browning, and I co-lead the Helicopter Safety Enhancement 127A for the USHST. And joining me today are 2 of my HSE team members. First, my co-lead, Tyson Phillips, a high-time Army helicopter instructor who spent years researching the topic of spatial disorientation, and Corey Boudreau, a high-time Coast Guard helicopter pilot with extensive operational training experience in degraded visual environments. So we've got some great talent on my team, which is fantastic. So we appreciate following Chris's discussion on the 56 seconds and Bruce's teaser video. Clearly the topic of spatial D warrants a conversation. I'll start here with some pretty compelling statistics. We conducted a survey in 2019 and early 2020, and we had 730 respondents, which is pretty good for an online survey. Nearly 70% of the people surveyed believed they'd experienced spatial D at some point in their careers, and over 70% indicated it was a significant concern for them. Of the respondents, nearly 80% said they'd received ground instruction, and 70% got hands-on training at some time in their career. And our data showed consistent results in both civil and military operations across all industry segments, from air ambulance to air tour to aerial application to personal private, and across all experience levels, from the low time pilot with less than 5 years of flying up to those with over 2,000 hours and greater than 20 years of flying. So based on that survey data, we believe a couple of things. There's a little bit of a misconception about what spatial disorientation is and what it is not. And if the current training were effective, it would be hard to understand why there were 130 spatial disorientation related accidents between 2000 and 2019. We strongly believe that the way we've been teaching this is not effective, and part of that is a misunderstanding of what spatial disorientation actually is and what is going on in your brain when you are truly spatially disoriented. So we're going to give Tyson an opportunity in a minute or so here to explain a little more clearly some of the concepts that are important to understand, and then understanding the value as well as the limitations of ground, simulator, and in aircraft training is critical to ensuring a robust and effective curriculum for training folks on this particular concept. Another misconception is that spatial D is a weather only or IMC issue. And as our title indicates, it needs to include any degraded visual environment, whether it's blowing dust and snow, low illumination night flights, flying into the sun, or obviously IMC. We think that that is key to understanding how important it is to effectively identify the conditions conducive to spatial disorientation so that you may avoid it. So we propose a little bit of a paradigm shift where deteriorating or unplanned visual conditions are handled just like any other emergency procedure in the aircraft, where you respond with predictable and predefined actions based on the caution or warning triggers that you receive, and adopting those early or en route decision triggers, EDTs, and identifying them in your pre-flight planning, which Corey will discuss in a little bit, may be the most effective tool to avoid a spatial D condition and an accident. So with that, I will turn it over to Tyson, who will provide a baseline of spatial disorientation and describe what's going on in your brain. This background is really key to understanding why we believe pre-flight planning and incorporating EDTs are the best defense. So Tyson.
Thank you, Jill. I'm going to start out and I'm going to end on two different accidents, and they're very different accidents with very different pilots. The first one was in New York City, and we've got an actual video. I'm not going to play the video, but rather a couple screenshots. So this one, I'm sure everyone's familiar with. We have a VFR pilot, comes out of the clouds at a very high or very aggressive descent. He's able to level off, which is interesting, but then immediately following, he's going to climb back into the clouds in what appears to be a very stabilized climb. And that is indicative of that spatial disorientation and how overwhelming it is. We're going to end on an accident that is a instrument rated pilot and kind of look at the differences there. Like Jill talked about, we've taught spatial disorientation through my research, my training, being trained, and also just the research I've done. We teach it on very much a rote level. We blend illusions with spatial disorientation. And when we look at spatial disorientation, it's characterized by the not knowing where you are in relation to the Earth or other surfaces. We often correlate the illusions, whether they visual or vestibular, to spatial disorientation. Lots of pilots have gotten the leans or other illusions without becoming disoriented by staying focused on their instruments. So to say that to say that an illusion in and of itself is disorientation is not necessarily true, but that's how we've taught it quite a bit. Of course, we've got the visual and vestibular systems are the two we're going to talk about. They're the two most prevalent that we deal with. From the visual system side, it makes up 80% of our orientation, which is kind of something that's been taught for a long time. The change in the different thought process is your visual system is capable of tricking your vestibular system. And we can prove this through 3D movies, through virtual reality. But for most of us have been in a simulator, if you've ever had the door open, whether it's motion or non-motion, your body feels like it's moving until you turn around and look over your shoulder and see the earth is not what you think it is inside the simulator. And your brain immediately cages. So even though our visual system is that 80%, it's even more so in the fact that it can trick our vestibular system. That's something that's really missed. Of course, when we talk about visual illusions, false horizon is a very simple one. This is, you've got two different views. Is the aircraft straight and level, or is it in a turn? And what we're going to find is this aircraft's actually in a turn, as you can see. False horizon is a very good example of how we can lead into vestibular illusions and the lean specifically. If we look at the Calabasas accident and you look at that sloping terrain, certainly conditions were conducive to picking up a false horizon and leading to some of those, driving those leans. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. As we've talked about vestibular, I put this on here because I don't like this diagram, and I know that sounds silly, but this is how we've taught it. And it's a bunch of doctor words, which for our pilots starts kind of putting them to sleep. But the real focus is by the visual system contributing to the disorientation or contributing to the illusions of the vestibular system. We don't really need to know what my inner ear is doing, but rather the conditions that get me into it. And of course, this is an easy one to demonstrate by putting someone in an aircraft, putting them into a standard rate turn for greater than 20 seconds. And then they'll develop those leans. And I've heard multiple ways of training it. The pilot flies, the trainer flies, eyes closed. But at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is stimulate that inner ear and create those illusions. Jill had mentioned with simulation, one of the gaps in how we're training right now is that with simulation, simulators don't have the range of motion required. So each method of training has some gaps that really need to be understood. And in the simulator, the gap is the absence of vestibular illusions. In the aircraft, it's the absence of visual illusions. What we've got to do is combine those two illusions. And that's what's happening during these accidents. So you take an accident sequence, a pilot develops a false horizon visually and develops that visual illusion. We've already proven in the simulator that my eyes can trick my ears, and we develop those leans, which this is the final piece of the puzzle that's not taught well. It's how the cognitive brain works. What's happening is those visual illusions lead the vestibular illusions, and now the brain has to process the data. We've never had training where the brain had to process the data. So oftentimes the first encounter with these conditions is going to be in an actual aircraft, and more often than not during an actual accident sequence. This is the key point, is how in the accident, and the focus is how the brain works. We're going to talk fast brain, slow brain. It's fight or flight. There's lots of different names of it. For me, fast brain, slow brain is the most easy to understand and says exactly what we're looking at. In slow brain, which is what we're looking at right now, you talk, think, respond. Of course, it happens quickly, but it's slow in comparison. As we go to the subcortical portion of the brain, we become reactive. It's fast brain. Our fast brain works in high stress situations, and anyone, and based on the previous poll of 70% of the people that answered have experienced, or excuse me, have chosen to continue into degrading weather. I think all of us have seen, or 70% of us, I should say, have been in that condition where that higher stress, that elevated stress level brought on by degraded visual environments. We went and talked to, through my research, I went and talked to some psychologists and explained the situation with the visual illusions and vestibular illusions. And the question I asked them is, what would your brain believe And in a fast brain scenario, which is what we're talking about, the brain's going to believe the last quote unquote known truth. And I pursued a little further and said, what do you mean by known truth? Because if I believe I'm straight and level, and then I look down at my instruments and they're telling me different, what's the last known truth? And they clarified and said, well, the last known truth is the last thing your eyes, your visual, and your ears, vestibular system agreed upon, which is that feeling of what the aircraft is. So as we continue flying into that degraded visual environment, continue fighting for visual reference instead of transitioning to the instruments, and leads to that vestibular, that last piece is that cognitive brain function. Now, when we look at these accidents, two things come up, and this is the Calabasas accident, and I chose it for the last because it is basically an opposite accident. But first, I want to point out how quickly these accidents occur. There's no time to make bad control inputs, so we have to train the brain to deal with what's going on. And in the absence of combined training, where we can combine the visual and vestibular system, illusions, we have to let our pilots know what their training is lacking. If you're in the simulator only, there's no vestibular. If you're in the aircraft only, there's no visual illusions. And that's critical to understanding. I truly believe knowing the gaps or the shortfalls of your training are just as important as understanding the values of the training. So with the Calabasas accident, the reason I chose this one, our first pilot was a VFR only pilot, and came out of the clouds in a condition I will promise you I would never intentionally fly back into clouds after coming out of them at that angle. Now we have an instrument rated pilot. And we can notice, and the only thing I really want to bring up is if we look at the red trend versus the green trend, we can make an assumption that the pilot had a lot of cyclic control inputs through that disorientation. And why this stands out is this environment's very complex. The body is very unique in how it responds and how it handles these situations. We could have two pilots experiencing disorientation in the same aircraft, but experiencing different illusions. One's thinking left, one's thinking right. And what that leads to is avoidance is the most effective method. So we have to make better decisions, both in the planning phase and the flight execution phase. And where we believe that key is through the en-route decision triggers. Corey, I'll turn it over to you on that one, sir.
All righty, can you hear me? Good to go. All right, hey, how's it going? My name's Corey Boudreau. As Jill and Tyson kind of already mentioned, we're trying to talk about sort of a different approach on how we're training and teaching spatial disorientation, specifically with a focus on understanding the conditions in which you're operating in and being able to identify those that are conducive to spatial disorientation or degraded visual environment. So once we've taught and once you've understood that those conditions or being able to forecast or identify those while the en route phase, what do you do next? Right? What's the next step? What do we do and when? There's a lot of things that we do well in aviation, and we have recommended best practices. We have checklists. We have a lot of standardization in just about everything we do in every facet of aviation. However, the one part I think that we all agreed on in our working group, the one thing that we do not do a very good job at, and that is training on when do we terminate a flight en route, right? So when are we going to terminate? When should we stop? When should we turn around? And that's not something that we really feel like we have a very good process for. So, I mean, we sit down and we'll sit at a table before we take off. We'll look at all the available information and we'll make a decision, a go-no decision on whether to take off the aircraft for that day. But we do a poor job of deciding when am I going to land my aircraft today. So that's kind of where we started with. We started looking at, are there any kind of best practices, and I should use universal, things that are universally accepted within the community. And there really is. There's a lot of talk in the FAA regs about aeronautical decision making and good judgment, and be safe and using your checklist, but there isn't a very prescriptive procedure, and I use prescriptive very loosely in this aspect. What I mean is basically a very basic guideline or steps that just about anybody can use and implement to get them out of a situation like this. So So we decided on the in-route decision trigger. Now, in full transparency, if that sounds just like the in-route decision point, it's because it basically is exactly just that. So as you see for the first thing up there, we got this idea from the folks at NEMSPA, the National EMS Pilots Association. And for those that aren't familiar with what the in-route decision point is, it's basically, it is a preset or set of parameters that if those parameters or that threshold is met and or exceeded, you are required to take action. That pilot is required to take action. So could be anything, could be a reduction in your airspeed, could be a reduction in ceiling, could be lowering your collect, doesn't matter, but you're required to do one of two things. And what they recommend is either, if possible, turning around, going back the way you came, if you can, landing the aircraft, or committing to IFR. So it was funny, I actually heard Miles Dunnigan give that presentation last year at HAI, and I was like, wow, what a great concept. How come I never heard of that before? And part of that was probably because I was a 20-year military pilot that couldn't really spell FAR. But as we talked about it and flushed it out more, we realized this wasn't as widely disseminated of a concept as we thought it should be. You know, they're doing yeoman's work over there, and we thought, what a great concept. So you can call it a rebranding. We're trying to maybe do a resurgence, and it was brought up that maybe we would use the term trigger vice point to try to, I guess, correlate maybe the term trigger with a decisive pilot action should they encounter one of these thresholds. So that's how we came up with the in-route decision trigger. So it's basically a predetermined set of conditions that, if met or exceeded, you will take action based on, it could be a number of different things. We weren't really being prescriptive in our approach, just that it is a very good concept that should be implemented. You know, so when we talked about trying to change the way we think about operating in a degraded visual environment, we really want to have a paradigm shift in the way that we do pre-mission planning, or I'm sorry, pre-flight planning, with regards to the EDT. You know, in a perfect world, we would have, this would be taught during a private pilot syllabus. They would sit down with a CFI, you would go through your weight and balance, you go through your NOTAMs, weather, all that, and then you get to the en-route decision trigger. And, you know, Joe or Jill pilot would be like, hey, you know, I think anything less than 5,003 today is going to be my en-route decision trigger. I'm not really comfortable with flying. So they go out, they go fly. And, you know, the instructor would simulate maybe getting ATIS from a local airport showing less than 5,003, which at that point, the pilot would initiate their en-route decision trigger. So, you know, teaching it early and often, I feel like is something that really should be something that is discussed, especially with this subject. I mean, that's what we're trying to get. We're trying to get folks to not continue down that road, down that path, and taking decisive action early. And the other nice thing about the en-route decision trigger during the pre-flight planning is, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm much more cool, calm, and collected sitting at the table trying to figure out what I'm not comfortable with flying in, as opposed to being in that condition, deciding, yeah, I'm not a huge fan. What should I do now? So you're really helping yourself out by coming up with this, you know, this limitation really is what you're doing. You're setting it for yourself. And also, as part of a crew, if you're talking about what your in-route decision trigger would be, you're not allowed to, I guess, implement that continuation bias where you're just going to continue on with the flight, even though you've met that threshold. So that's really kind of where we are as a working group. Not really sure why the EDP didn't get as much attention as it needs to get. Maybe it was just a dissemination. Not sure if the promotion. And again, please, that's nothing on negative towards the folks at NEMSPA. Like I said, I think it's a great concept, and I think that's why we're talking about it today. So, you know, we've got a lot of different I guess, resources in our paper that we just published here. But for those of you that aren't familiar with the EDP, EDT, you know, the nice thing about this is it's scalable, right? The problem with this issue, as you've seen from the presentations today from Jill's intro, is that this isn't just one community. This is spreads throughout all the communities, all hour levels and all ages. So it's very hard to target one audience. So this is a scalable solution. It's simple to understand, and if executed properly, highly effective. And that's what we're advocating for. So give it a shot, check out the paper, turn it over to Joe. Thank you.
Yeah, that's it for us. If anybody has any questions, we're happy to field those.
Awesome, Jill. Thank you so much, Tyson. Thank you, Corey. Great job. Let's see. Some only question I see is from our good friend Dudley Crossan, who has a physiologist background, so he's pretty smart on this. He did quite a question. Do you really mean the vision tricks vestibular or override it? And I don't know if Dudley can come up on audio, but I know he can help to describe that as well.
When I said that the visual tricks the vertigo, I don't know. I don't know. I would say whether I mean tricks or overrides. And the reason is because there's probably some technical definitions I don't want to jump on. But what I'm trying to say there is the visual system has a lot of input. In the absence of vestibular inputs, we feel like we're moving. So I don't know that the right word is tricks. I'm a pilot, so that was the word I use. But the visual system has a lot of ability to override or mimic and convince the vestibular system of things that are just not there.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate that, Tyson. Another question that came in is EDP similar to setting personal minimums?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, and it's kind of interesting as well, you know, depending on how large the organization that you either fly with. So if you fly within an organization, most likely you're going to have limitations, whether it's in your standard operating procedures or not. Where it's really, really difficult to do is when you're out there by yourself, either you know, single pilot or just doing that in the recreational aspect is setting personal minimums or even knowing that that's something you should be doing. So absolutely, that's exactly what we're talking about. That's really the community that we're really trying to hit as hard, because the dissemination is hard. You know, we're all aviation safety professionals. We're all reading, we're familiar with the resources available to us, and we're seeking the information, and some people just don't know where to get it or how to get it. So absolutely, this is definitely targeted, you know, for people to set personal limitations as well.
Awesome. There were two more. I'm going to jump over Jeff's question real quick and go, because this one other one that says, what I haven't heard is why not just stop forward flight before going IMC, all caps, question mark. And the gentleman goes on to say, I would just stop flying forward. I rarely fly at night in rotorcraft. So very similar to the personal minimums for sure. You know, stopping yourself before you even get in that situation for sure. And then going back to Jeff's question, his comment, last known truth rings true. Can you talk about vestibular illusions causing visual illusions also? And that was to Tyson.
The vestibular illusions are causing visual illusions. I think the challenge there is you have to be in an environment to create that's conducive to visual illusions. And what I mean by that is it's easy for me to close my eyes and demonstrate the leans. When I open my eyes take over, they take control. I think I cannot cite an example. I think with certain technology, you could do it. You have to be in a condition that is possible to create vestibular illusions and then be able to trick the eyeball. And that's the challenge. Is it's easy to trick the eyeball in the simulator. It does a great job of it. It's hard to trick the vestibular system. And the same is true in an aircraft. So you'd have to be in an aircraft where the vestibular system is being stimulated by the natural forces of the aircraft. And then the other side of that coin is being able to trick the eyesight at the same time, creating that degraded visual environment. I cannot say that I know of an example of that that happening. Certainly not on a regular basis. And I think in part that is because if both systems are functioning, even if they're functioning incorrectly with illusions, if the eyes are working, the eyes will or should typically give you a greater piece of information. But I do think it is possible. You just have to have unique characteristics. And if I may, Chris, on the premise of stopping a helicopter, the only thing I would add to that is when you slow an aircraft down, the whole point of the en route decision trigger is turning around or making a decision before you reach your personal minimums. I would challenge you, if you're going to stop, I think the answer is land. Hovering an aircraft in that type of condition is not going to end up in a good situation. You're going to end up in the same situation, spatially disoriented, in the most unstable platform you could hope for, a hovering helicopter. So the point of the en route decision trigger is to not get to the point that hovering is your best option. So whether it's commit to the clouds, depending on your equipment, your platform, and your capabilities, or if it's landing or turning around, but coming to a hover, I think the better, and this is just me speaking, if your decision is I need to come to a hover, and I think the best decision is you should land and execute one of those three: land, turn to known VMC, or commit to the instruments, because the hover is a very unstable platform, especially if you end up having to transition away from it. It takes a while to get that aircraft stable at that point.
Yeah, for sure. And you could look back at that Alaska DPS accident many years ago and look at the flight track and the fact that they were in a hover and how unstable that was in the clouds, in the fog. Yeah, very challenging. So yeah, the land and live, Chris Hill brought that comment up as well. I think that is the goal for that stopping, right? In the other mitigations that you described. So yeah, thank you for that. Another question came in, or a comment: Autopilot solves a lot of these issues, and you're right. And what an awesome segue to, not to jump over Nick's presentation that's next, but we will be talking about the SAS and Autopilot as well. So I don't see anything else in there. So with that, I will say thank you again for you all, the hard work that you've done in the paper. I encourage everyone to go read that. It's on the USHST website. Great information, obviously what you provided today as well as part of that. So thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, Michael, let's jump into our next polling question, number 4.
Okay, we've got a 2-minute quiz here for everyone. Polling question number 4 is our segue into decision making, education, simulations. Can we call up the 4th question, please? Have you ever learned from a mistake that you made while using a simulation device for training? So thinking about continuing on our theme, decision making, how you processed information. Have you learned from a mistake while using a simulation device for training? This makes me think about the old phrase about experience is the one thing you needed, or the one thing you get right after you needed it. So how do we increase the learning before you need it? And when we get to the 75% number on respondents, can we show that? I can't see the number that's coming in here.
We're about at 64, so go ahead.
Here we go. So overwhelmingly, people are learning from mistakes that they've made while using simulation devices. So that's telling us that there are ways to learn before it gets real bad. Great response there. We want to segue over and learn a bit more. And thank you for that response. Chris, I'll let you tee up, introduce next.
All right, awesome, thank you. So next up, we've got the topic, helicopter safety enhancement number 123, which is increased simulation education to develop safe decision-making. Presenting that topic will be Nick Mayhew. And Nick, I'm gonna bring up my screen for you. Let's see.
I've got it ready to go if you want. Okay, you get.
I got it. Yeah, can you see that?
Yeah, it's there. Thank you.
Awesome. And then before you jump in, there was a question that came in about virtual reality for training. So I'm going to keep that question there, Nick, till you're done, and let you tackle that question after you're done.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, great to see that, you know, and the majority of the people on the call have learned from their mistakes. And this is the whole premise of this safety enhancement. If you could just go to the next slide, please. So this was an enhancement that came out of a lot of analysis of accidents that we worked through as the USHST, probably about 5 years ago now, and there were a number of fatal accidents that we found that we decided that if the pilot had seen that situation before, they would not have got into that situation again. So call that learning from your mistakes, calling that experience, or whatever. So we put together this HSE. It was a combination of the FAA and industry working together to try and increase the use of simulation or relevant simulation to rehearse these at-risk scenarios to develop ADM, aeronautical decision making, and then get that information out there. That was the task. Next slide, please. So these were the working group members that we pulled together. I was elected as the lead, and we quickly got a team together that looked like this. A lot of people from different parts of the industry. We wanted some training providers, we wanted simulation providers, and we wanted some help from faculty, from the educational side, and of course the FAA. We started out with Jim Saccone, who handed over to Sean Hayes, and I'm now working with Brad Palmer from the FAA on AFS 800. Frasco is in there. Randy was doing a great job with us. AT Systems, Andre was with us. Embry-Riddle, Georgia Tech, Flight Safety, FIT, and then some operators, Air Methods, Textron True, FAA Tech Center, and a couple of others from training providers. So that was the group that we pulled together. Next slide, please. These were the accidents that we found in where the event or the cause of the accident probably would not have happened had the pilot seen the situation before. Now you can see on the left-hand side there are a number of loss of control accidents. And of course, on the bottom right, some low altitude accidents, which actually also include another HSE that we worked on, HSE 75, which was an accident where the throttle was closed too quickly on a 300 or a Hughes 269, and the engine stopped, and the aircraft ended up in the trees. Actually killed the one of the occupants. So we elected to put that into this HSE because it was a scenario that we could relate to, and we could put together, which would show people that if you quickly closed the throttle or snapped it shut or whatever words you want to use, that the engine could stop in those type of aircraft. But the main issue here that we're talking about now is UIMC, unintended flight into IMC, and you can see there are a number of accidents all described here by the NTSB identifier that we felt had the pilot seen this situation before and got into that situation, that they would not have, they would have lived and they would have done something else. And we've already heard about triggers and en route decision points, et cetera, et cetera. So these are things that we can put together in a scenario, and people can rehearse that, even if they've never seen the situation before in a simulator. Next slide, please. There were some related initiatives going on before we started this. The USHST did produce a position paper back in July of 2016, which is out there if you want to go and have a look at it. It's on the website. And it came out of the training work group as it existed back then, to improve the use of helicopter simulators and enhance safety. So that was to try and increase the use of simulators. And the NTSB supported that us with a safety alert that they then brought out. Again, you can go and see that and find it on that the link that you can see there on the NTSB website. And interestingly enough, there was also a research initiative conducted by AERI, the Airmanship Education Research Initiative, which was a DARPA, US Air Force funded initiative run by Dr. Rhodes, who took 108 participants from across the board, from private to ATP, and they gave them two separate scenarios. They put one into a scenario in a simulator where the scenario was a VFR into IMC situation. That's what we've been talking about, DVE on this webinar, and then another one that had a fuel leak in it. There were two flight training devices, two groups, and some of them went into these scenarios and didn't survive. They crashed the aircraft, they ran out of fuel, or they didn't survive when they went into IMC. So they took those people out, and then they put them through an FAA ADM and a Trustworthy Pilot online course to try and teach them more about ADM. And then they put each group back into the other scenario. So they had not seen the second scenario before. And what they found was that pilots with good ADM skills performed well in both scenarios, which you would expect. But pilots who made the wrong decision in the first scenario the decisions they made were significantly reduced. The wrong decisions they made were significantly reduced in the second scenario, proving that they learned from their mistakes. And the point here is that it's not just learning from a single scenario and a single mistake. They learned, it was the concept of making that decision based on a scenario that they had seen. You don't necessarily need to have seen the same scenario exactly the same way before. It's a thought process that drives a decision-making process that this proved. So there are other research of other things out there to validate in-flight behavior, LOSA initiatives, etc. Take a look at AC 12090. There's some good information out there. Next slide, please. So just to look at the dates that we were working with, this was back, we started in 2018, and we gave ourselves 3 years effectively till 2021, which is in May this year. So we are currently claiming 95% complete, and I'll explain what that means in a moment. Next slide, please. So output one was to review all the guidance, gather the team together, liaise with the work group that we'd pulled together. We leveraged off the Pegasus project, which was identified some scenarios and some synergies from their scenario-based training simulation research. We created a quick 30-second for safety video promoting SBT, scenario-based training in simulation, and we set up monthly calls. We've been meeting every month since we started this. Next slide, please. So output 2 and 3 was initially the idea was to draft and submit an advisory circular to the FAA to identify the initial set of scenarios with the lesson plans based on these fatal accidents that we had identified as the scenarios. We issued a press release, and what we actually found was the FAA were having some issues processing the AC and putting it together. So what we ended up doing was putting together a recommended practices document that pulled all this information into a single document that was going to go into the AC and still may go into the AC because I'm still working with the FAA on this. But we wanted to get the information out there, having created the scenarios and identified them, we wanted people to get out there and start using them. So we developed and created those simulation, the fatal accidents, mainly driven by Embry-Riddle and Georgia Tech. And we slot them, we drop them into the annex of this recommended practices document. We've been talking about it at various other places, like I'm talking about it to you now. We have presented on it at the Rotor Safety Challenge. In the last 2 Heli Expos, there's been an article in the Airbeat magazine, and this last bullet here just refers back to the HSC 75, which we dropped into the scenarios to take care of this scenario of rapid throttle chop or throttle reduction. Next slide, please. So here's the recommended practices document with the annexes, and you will find this on the USHST website under HSC 123. It's quite a few pages. It includes the scenario. It includes some advice on how to build the scenario and a lesson plan for each of the different areas. So I would encourage you to use this. And to be honest, it's not just simulation training that you can use this for. You can use these for classroom training, for one-on-one training with your instructor, or your instructor with you. And maybe your flight reviews may be a good time to get one of these scenarios out and run through them. But it is most effective in the simulator. And to answer the first question coming up, the simulator doesn't need to be a tradition. It can be any type of simulator, including virtual reality simulators, which are now becoming far more available and far more. They have, the fidelity of these things are increasing. So you can run these scenarios in any simulator, whether it be an AATD, virtual reality, all the way up to level D simulators. And you just adapt. The lesson plan will take you through how to adapt it for each scenario and each mission that you're going to train for. We do have still the advisory circular is still submitted to the FAA. It's been out there since they've had it since June of 19, and I'm just recently been working with Brad Palmer on just to see if we can get this out by May. Been lots of changes, lots of challenges legally on getting this out. If we do get an AC out, it won't be as full as the recommended practices document, but I'm hoping that there'll be something there to support it. So it's out there, and the last thing we're doing at the moment is putting together a 5-minute video, again with Randy Goenda up at Frasca is helping us do that. We've written a script to try and get put out there a scenario so you can see in a quick YouTube video how this works. So hopefully you'll see that coming out soon as well. Next slide, please. So that gives you an idea on what we've done and what we've produced. Please go and have a look at the website and pull off the recommended practices document and have a read through it. And I'm hoping it'll help you make a difference to keep everything in the green and learn from your mistakes.
Awesome, Nick. Thank you so much for providing the information. Yeah, truly training, simulation, flight training devices, flight scenarios in the aircraft, on your check rides, all of that truly proves beneficial to our ability to perform better and reduce these incidents. On the questions, you did touch on the one that came in earlier, the article that was read on NPR about the virtual reality. Certainly that can be an opportunity more and more as that technology further develops.
Absolutely.
Another question that came in, or comment in a way, individuals interested to know of those that did not learn or correct a mistake in a simulator. Why not? Have they never been in a simulator?
Yeah, I was going to ask that question as well, but I'm not sure we're going to find out the answer. You know, did those people who answered they hadn't learned, have they not done it? Have they not used a simulator? So, you know, I would be interested to know what situation if you did use a simulator and you didn't learn from your mistakes, why, and what was done, what led to that lack of learning, if you like. I'd be interested to know that.
Yeah, definitely. There was a comment in the chat. Judgment is the result of making a series of non-fatal mistakes. I know that, you know, we talked about decision making earlier. Certainly, behaviors, our value system, our culture, all has a profound effect on our ability to make good decisions or the right decisions. You know, through experience, proficiency, and knowledge, you know, we can help ourselves make better decisions for sure. You know, unfortunately, a lot of people, especially on the personal private side, or maybe, you know, single ship owners, you know, don't have the luxury per se of a dedicated simulator. But I think the availability of simulators is definitely getting better. The affordability of simulators is getting better. The flight training devices that exist are getting better and more affordable as well. So I think there's more and more opportunity. You know, maybe you can speak on that, Nick, about what is accessible for folks to use.
Yeah, hopefully I can get through this, answer this without my dog barking. I think somebody's at the front door. Yeah, I mean, the opportunities are out there. If and I just want to reiterate, it doesn't matter what level of simulator that you can use. You can do this in you know, in the lowest level of fidelity, without motion, and you know, FAATDs, BATDs. You just need to adapt the scenarios that you're going to use in those to adapt to the level of fidelity that you're using. If you've never been in a simulator, I would encourage you to do so. It is an awesome tool. It is the safest way to learn. You can make a mistake and it doesn't kill you. And that's probably the most important thing that you need to remember. You're on mute, Chris.
I sure was, thanks. I made it this far without making the mistake, but it certainly got me. Anyways, we got to move on. Great job, Nick. Thank you for the information. Again, there's lots of additional information available on the USHST website, so please go there and reference that. And we'll jump into our next polling question, Michael, if you want to lead that off, number 5.
Yes, if we could please get number 5 question up for our participants. And this has to do with Stability Augmentation Systems, or Autopilot, or SAS. You're going to hear that acronym coming up. Real short question. Challenge here. A helicopter is naturally stable, unstable, or uncontrollable. Depends on the situation you've been in and what you've experienced, but very short statement here that the topic is covered in much more detail in the documents that come out of HSC 70, that study, the report and activity, but be very curious to see what our participants feel about the stability or lack of stability of a helicopter. If we're getting responses here, I'll be very interested to see. Oh. And the survey says unstable. Well, 3% of our respondents, 2 of them, uncontrollable. I think they work fairly controllable, but the stability, instability question is going to be covered a lot more in the next topic. I think we want to reserve that final judgment. We're not going to come off and say they're unstable or uncontrollable here, but certainly there is equipment and studies that are going to help drive that to a better place. So turn it over to you, Chris, to get the next.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks everybody for answering the questions. Our next topic, helicopter safety enhancement number 70, which is stability augmentation system, SAS, and autopilot. You know that someone made a comment earlier, so again, a good segue. We'll have Eric and Tony come on up if you're available, and you have your slides. You can present. Let's see.
Chris, are you talking to us? Oh, we're having some bandwidth issues. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I got you, Eric.
Oh, there we go. I'm gonna kill the video.
Hey, Chris, can you hear me? We just killed our video because we're having bandwidth issues.
That's fine. Yeah. Do you want to share your presentation or have one of us do it?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and do it.
I'll share it, Chris. I'm ready to go.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Go ahead and load it up there.
Yep.
And Eric and Tony, go right ahead.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Apparently going out better than we're coming in. So, yeah, thank you for having us. I'm Tony, speaking over Eric's computer here. So I wanted to say thanks for everybody for doing a lot of hard work. The presentations have been great so far. The HSE that we're going to cover, 70 here, kind of ties a couple things together. And if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. When you go read the HSC in the back, there's a long list of folks who participated in putting this together. We had some very technical engineering folks help, and we turned it all into easy to read and should be easy to understand. Our specific HSC here has to do with promoting stability and augmentation and autopilots for light helicopters. As most of us are aware, you know, the Part 27 helicopters it's hard to get these devices into them. One, because they're light, and two, because the cost point and the certification activities aren't really made for light helicopters. It's more for the Part 29 and you get into heavier stuff. So, but if you look at the accidents, and there's a whole list of them that are tied to this, if you read the HSC, it's, you know, we determined that some of these devices, while they're not going to stop accidents, would definitely give you a leg up when you do hit that unintended IMC event or degraded visual environment, or have any other thing go wrong. If you can add more stability to the aircraft, it will be significantly helpful in bad situations. So what we tried to do is find devices that are available on the market and that could be put into helicopters, and then also propose and present other future ways to do these things if we could get them into the lighter helicopters. So you can see the data up there, and Eric has tied it, credit to Eric, he did this presentation. So you've got the big three up there that tie into this, and then you've got your Venn diagram, and it kind of shows where these tie together. And I'm going to go ahead and let Eric talk, because he and a couple other folks did the majority of the work on this paper, and they did a great job. So go ahead, Eric.
Okay, so let me just point out here that the effort in this paper overlapped with an effort that was done a couple of years ago between HAI, AEA, Gamma, and at that time AHS, now VFS, looking at promoting IFR capability and certification in light helicopters. Both now, I mean, that was looking at trying to get into the existing fleet. There's going to be a family of aircraft, of helicopters that you just can't get into with that. But even there, we want to be able to get into these aircraft with stability augmentation and improvements to reduce these accidents. And you can see together, these two measures will address moving helicopters out of low-level ops, dealing with inadvertent IMC, and loss of control situations. Next slide, please. So the mix here is autopilot, and stability is the key ingredient. So the ability to deal with distractions, momentary disorientations, reduced visual situations, having a stable aircraft where you can basically let go of the controls and have that aircraft tend to return to a straight and level flight is a major factor in being able to deal with those situations. The problem is the helicopter is naturally unstable. Of course, not so unstable that we can't fly it, but enough so that that in normal VFR flight, we're depending on a lot of visual cues to keep the dirty side down, so to speak. And so we need in a helicopter to artificially provide that in order to gain that same level of safety. So next slide, please. Okay, so really, with these autopilot systems and stability augmentation systems, they build up in capability. The most basic form is right now in most rotorcraft, small rotorcraft, the controls are held in place by friction. You set a friction and you move the controls from that. Advancing up to a spring type force trim system where you could disturb a control and it comes back under spring force is usually the basic level that you've got to get to before you can start adding these other capabilities. From there, we add stability augmentation and the ability of the aircraft to maintain and hold a certain attitude. And then from there, you can start layering on basic coupled modes such as holding heading, airspeed, altitude, and vertical speed. And that is right there is your basic autopilot. And that is where you get a lot of your safety enhancement, your real hardcore safety enhancement for a loss of control. Problem is that the value provided to the usual operator for the cost and the complexity and what it takes to go certify that installation usually doesn't buy it onto the aircraft. And so generally we have to provide more features to make it a value to the operator so that they want to install these things. Now, I mean, the next level of advanced modes is the ability to couple that autopilot to, or that system to various navigation aids to be able to do en route navigation, approach, go around, hold, this sort of thing. Now that's normally tied with IFR procedure. And certainly if you can get IFR capability, you've now added a value to that helicopter in being able to operate in IFR with an IFR qualified pilot. However, that's, like I said, that's not always possible going back into the existing fleet. What we've seen evolve over the last number of years are safety enhancements that can be added in to that basic layer. Things like envelope protection, where if you start to stray too far from the straight and level, you start to get nudges from the autopilot. Auto level or save me attitude recovery. Garmin, for instance, has this capability where you can press a button and if you have gotten yourself to the point where you're feeling you're starting to lose it, you hit the button and it returns you to a straight and level flight situation, and from there you can recover. Hover assist in low speed and in DVE type situations. We have, and once you're driving into the flight controls, you can get things like automatic hover departure, auto-rotative assistance, helping you reduce the collective and get yourself into an auto-rotation type situation. So automatically detecting the engine failure and feeding that in. Now there's been talk about, when you start to get into the advanced features and dealing with collective, you've got to start to talk about fourth axis systems. And there's been talk about integrating with TAWS and TCAS. That's being looked at. And a lot of people are, of course, excited about auto land capability, which is something that has now been certified in the fixed wing environment. But that auto land capability has really been introduced to deal with an incapacitated pilot, where the certification process is you're starting from a position where you've considered the aircraft already a loss, and anything you do from that point forward is a benefit, and therefore there is a reduced certification requirement to complete that. So these are all the features that can come with these systems as they're added into the aircraft. Next slide, please. All right, just to give you an idea of the certification environment, we've actually had a lot of help from the FAA. There for VFR, oops, sorry, go back, yeah. For VFR autopilots, one of the big problems right now is the 271309 rule. There has been an upgrade sitting on the books for a while that, that's gone through public comment and is all ready to go. It just hasn't been brought in yet. And right now, because the current rule kind of stops at the major hazard classification as far as certifying systems for VFR rotorcraft, every time autopilots are going for VFR certification, they require a special condition, and that adds to the cost and the time and the risk of doing a certification program. Eventually, in the regulation level, we'd like to get to performance-based standards similar to what's occurring in Part 23, but that's going to be a while coming. That's been kind of stalled, and it needs to get started again. But we had a lot of really good movement with policy, NORC, which is a policy that reduces the certification requirements for non-required safety enhancing equipment. That came in 2016 and reduces the certification hurdle to get that equipment onto aircraft. The big one was the safety continuum that came in 2017, and that directly led to the IFR certifications that have occurred recently in 2019. But the 1309 policy is really involved with showing the failure and development assurance for those systems. HERF and lightning requirement is another big hurdle. And again, Part 23 has a policy that makes it easier to go into retrofit situations and deal with that. We don't have that yet in Part 27, but the FAA has been very cooperative there and understands the problems in pushing the Part 25 type compliance and has allowed us to address that with individual issue papers. Now that's more difficult than if we had existing policy for somebody other than an OEM to go do that. But that's where we're. So we have made good progress in this, and we are starting to see more product out there because of it. Next slide, please. Yeah, and so this is a listing of what's available on the market at the time the paper was written anyway, as to what's available both VFR and IFR, and you can see a variety of different equipment and different approaches by the OEMs and a number of third-party solutions. It's clear Helisas, Genesis with Helisas, has a large chunk of the market, and that's largely because they have a parallel only solution, which I'll get into on the next slide. And I'll let you go back and look at this list if you want more detail, but let's go to the last slide since I'm running out of time quickly. So, so this just goes through if you're looking at autopilots, the types of discussions you'll get into. A key factor is the sensors that feed it, the attitude sensors. MEMS technology, or basically the same technology that tells your phone which way it's oriented, has been applied to AHRS to greatly reduce the cost of that. Force trim The traditional technology is spring and clutch, but folks like Garmin have come in with electromotive force, reducing the cost and allowing some special features by using EMF instead of springs. One of the big trade-offs you get into is series parallel. You get a performance benefit with series parallel, but a lot of the low-cost ones are parallel only, and they're able to accomplish a lot with that. The one thing you get is when the system is augmenting stability, you're feeling that action on the controls, like as if you had an invisible pilot next to you flying and providing that input. You actually feel those inputs as they occur. Series parallel, the series system adds or subtracts control without the pilot really being aware that he's being made to look a lot better in his flying than he actually is. I could say that from personal experience. And then I go through what we normally mean by 2-axis, 3-axis, and 4-axis. 2-axis being pitch and roll. A lot of the VFR systems are 2-axis. Actuators in the system are the biggest cost element. And so a 2-axis parallel only system will naturally be much lower cost than anywhere up from there. And that's I think that's the last slide. Next slide. Yeah. So that should give you a flavor of the type of information that's in the paper, and I invite you to read the paper for more details.
Well, Eric and Tony, thank you so much. Awesome information, and I'm really glad to see what is available that's out there. And you just made the comment about how it can help you improve your skills, so to speak. I can attest to that as well. It definitely can help you be a better pilot. One question, that I have, I haven't seen anything come in yet from the audience, but what of the idea where we as pilots, going back to how it makes us better, rely too heavily on it? And I've heard people make comments where they like to turn it off because they feel like they're losing their skill set, proficiency, if you will. Is there any debate around that kind of idea of relying on it too much?
You want to talk? You want me to?
Well, yeah, I'm going to let Tony take that one.
So yeah, it's Tony again, even though it says Eric. We're COVID distanced here, so we're on one side of each of a table. I haven't flown for a couple of years, but back in the old days, in the stab bar Huey versus the AFCS Huey days, you would have guys go fly the fully augmented helicopter and turn everything off just so they could fly it. But I think as that crowd kind of went away and people got used to the systems, I don't see any degraded ability in basic flying skills between the older crowd and the younger crowd who grew up with it. It's kind of like saying you need to practice with steam gauges to stay proficient on steam gauges. I don't buy that in the long run. I do understand wanting to fly the Bell helicopter because it's kind of fun sometimes, but if you get used to these systems, when you actually have a bad day, you don't have to figure out how to turn them on when you're already in a bad situation and you're used to flying with them, and you're still flying the helicopter. So it's my take.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Tony. A comment that came in, let's see, the truth is that automation is somewhat a bane to basic airmanship discussed with airline cockpit crews during en routes, and surprising number agree. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so I know we're getting short on time and getting to the top of the hour, but again, I want to thank you both for your time and all the hard work that went into the safety enhancement paper. Again, encouraging folks participating to go to the website, download it, read it, and learn from it. clearly look and see what technology could be incorporated into your aircraft. Anything else, Tony, Eric? No.
No, good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you. All right, let's jump into our last two polling questions. This is for our FAST team friends. Let's go ahead and put those up there. Those numbers are coming in, looking good. About at 60%, yeah. So, Michael, a good proportion.
84, strong support for FAAsafety.gov. Can we go to the second question now? We're running a little short on time, trying to do a on-time arrival here. The second question has to do with like your current phase in the WINGS program. So hopefully people are in the WINGS program, and do you hold a current phase in that WINGS program? The pilot proficiency program. If it's new to you, please go out to the FAAsafety.gov. Look for more information on the WINGS program. There's an advisory circular out there. There's a reference guide, some real good information on that, and how you can remain current. A program that's helping drive proficiency, active use. So let's see what we have. Wow, perfectly 50-50 out of the 72 people. Let's see if we can drive the yeses for the next webinar. We'll keep moving.
Yeah, you'll definitely encourage everyone to, the FAST team does a lot of hard work, and the people that support that volunteer, the events that they host. Again, continuing ed, much like what we're trying to do today, the more education you all have in the community, in the industry, the better, the more knowledge we are, and the better ability to make decisions. So I encourage you to go on that FAST team website, search, you can break it down by state where you live, zip code, find out what's available for you to participate in. A lot of them are online, obviously with COVID, so it makes it even easier, even if it's a time zone difference. But I know they try to accommodate folks and have things on weekends as well. So please check it out. Let's see, I'm gonna share my screen real quick. I don't think we had any requests or input from our focals related to any support on the helicopter safety enhancements, but I do encourage everybody to get involved and help out as much as you can. Please go to you can see the organizational. We don't have any changes right now, but you can see it's all made up of volunteers and industry and government folks. So anyone can participate and take a kind of a leading role, if you will. So we encourage you to do that. Go to the website. You can register there as a member, kind of a member of USHST, and get assigned to different helicopter safety enhancements. Please check us out on Facebook and LinkedIn. I know Scott posted the Facebook link. I put in the LinkedIn link. Daily information going out on that, so please follow. If you have questions, feedback, send it to our safety at USHST.org. We encourage you to participate and give us feedback, especially for these webinars, things that you like, don't like. We're all about continuous improvement within our own safety management system, so to speak. So let us know how we're doing and what we can do to help you. Our next webinar, we're going to shoot for May of this year. So we try to do about every other month. So look for any information for that. And we're at the top of the hour, and so I want to make sure Nick and Wayne, our co-chairs, have an opportunity to give us any parting wisdom. Or if there are any last minute questions that come in. I did see one that how to volunteer. Again, go to the website and there's a link at the top there to volunteer. So if you have any questions, send us an email. We can get you directed.
Chris, thanks. Nick, Nick here, literally 15 seconds, so we stay on time. Great job on keeping us on time, by the way. But I shout out to Chris Young and Chris Hill and all the people behind the scenes who put this on. It is no mean feat to put together something like this, I will tell you. So well done. Thanks to the Chris's and your team. And please, you know, and all the HSE leads who presented here, outstanding job, a lot of great information. Please go to the USHST website and pull up the information that's been referred to. And that's all I have. Just keep it in the green out there. Thanks.
Awesome. I'm not sure if Wayne's still on or not.
I am. And I'd like to thank everybody. I don't want to repeat, but I would like to say that there are two things I heard today that I think I'd really like to reemphasize. One is go to ushst.org and take a look at it. And if you're not involved with the FAA safety programs, please get involved. There's a direct correlation between the safety and the proficiency and the skill set of folks that are engaged in those programs versus those that aren't. You're just going to be safer if you're engaged. So please take a look at both of those. Thank you so much. Chris, back to you. And what a great job you did. Appreciate it.
Let me come off mute. Michael, any closing comments from you?
Just thanks to everybody for their help, and look forward to talking to you again in May.
Yep. Likewise, thank you for all our presenters. Thank you for all our attendees and participants. We look forward to having you join us again in May. So take care, everybody. Be safe out there.
Nice job, Chris. Mike.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Take care, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Chris and Ashton. Everybody, appreciate it.
Right on, brother. Take care. Ashton gives a thumbs up. See you later.
Bye-bye.